before, this practice of observing the sense, observing the sense I am. Do you reckon is that quite compatible with Buddhist practice, or is it sort of going in a slightly different direction?
Well, it's an upaya, so because what I wanted to do is really, like I am is a statement of presence, really. It's not even personal yet. Mm-hmm. Just on the practical level of the grammar, I am. It's a statement of presence, of being here. And then I am Ajahn Sumedho, then it starts going into the personal. So you be able to discern the difference between the function of the pronoun I as it becomes strongly identified with adjectives or other things. And so, like in Hinduism, they use I am a lot as a kind of mantra. But in terms of investigation of the fetters, I wanted to see what it's like to have this sense of I am, and so I just kept thinking it over and over and trying to how thinking I am, how the effects of that, and it is a sense of presence, of being present, which is fair enough. It's not like something wrong with it, but it is. And then it goes into I am better than you are, or I'm an American, you're Norwegian. Then it goes into, differentiating, approving, disapproving. I am is nothing but a statement. It's not about being better, worse, or whatever than anyone else. Or identity, I am an American is it's like samot satya, it's conventional, fair enough. I have a passport and so forth, so that on the conventional level it's fair enough. But then the identity with that word, like I am an American, because if you keep observing, it has a certain kind of emotional, you feel something about it. Because you're conditioned, like I'm conditioned through that culture, my generation, very different from yours, I think. And it was, I was born in the 30s, so you're in a depression and a war and so forth, and the whole sense of being American was very patriotic, very powerful. But it was conditioned into consciousness. And being able to observe that, then I began to discern that which is aware of I am is not an I am, but it is what it is. I am is merely a linguistic convention. And, so in other languages it's something else, but so it's not like ultimately real, it's just a linguistic mechanism. But the sense of I, the sense of I tends to isolate me as if the reality of my life is this body and my life and my, it puts you always in as some kind of contrast with the external. It holds you in the egoistic form, and then you're educated and conditioned to function within that form, within that structure. So it is very limiting to have an ego. And it can be, even if I think I'm better than somebody, that's suffering. Or I'm not as good as everyone, is suffering. Or I'm the same as, in the scriptures they talk about. We're all the same, we're all just as good as, or superior or inferior. So that it's not about inferior, superior, or the same, but about language, thought, conceiving into words, and then the critical attitudes that come from that. Because inevitably, say, this is better, this is a glass, and this is a bottle, and so forth, and this is plastic, this is glass, and then we have our views of it's plastic. In England they think plastic they say plastic always is a sneer, glass is all right. I mean, these are and you get to see your own biases and cultural assumptions. It's not to say that it's wrong to sneer at plastic, but to realize it is like this, and then comparing yourself, like the ego is very, like in Americans, say you're brought up in an egalitarian ideal that we're all equal, but it's the most competitive society you'll ever live in. You probably realized when you were there, all about competition, proving you're better than somebody else. So it's confusing. You got the ideal, everybody, we're all equal, and then compete with each other for, the winners. That's what we is held out to be, a winner, not a loser. Well, and these are cultural attitudes that we don't even choose. We acquire them through osmosis, through being born in that society where everybody thinks like that. And so then the feeling of I'm not as good, if I'm not winning, if I'm not the best, then I'm not very good. Because you tend to compare yourself with the best, and so then you're never going to. You might have moments where you can be the best, but you can't. It's unsustainable. You can't sustain the best. So, but language has its purpose, So we have to just discriminate. This is bigger and smaller, and this is blue, and this is red. And there's nothing, not denying the practical validity of language and critical mind, but when we're attached to that function, then we're blinded by it. We're always comparing things with ideals and with what we think is the best and the worst, and the fears that come, emotional fears of failure. Like with men, there's a tremendous fear of being a failure, because the ideal is to be a winner, and to be accepted, to be liked in the society, not to be persecuted or rejected by society. We all fear rejection. We want to be accepted and loved and admired in society. We don't want to be despised and abused. So the ego develops around this, the experiences we have, and the identities, what class identity. Whether you're working class or middle class, whatever, these are very fraught identities in the English class structure. They do affect how you interpret your self-worth. Is like a working class, is it inferior to middle class or upper class? Being upper class is probably better than being working class. There's kind of, this kind of snobbery, this kind of attitude of something's better than something else, which is not, which is in many cases is the way it is, true, but this is a way out of that, out of those two extremes, out of the best and worst, and good and bad, and that's through this awareness. It's always amazed me how simple it is, considering how complicated. Look at your own body. how complicated it is, all the things affecting consciousness at this moment. That only when it starts going wrong do we bring attention to it. So then and then just physically or sensually, just the eye, what an amazing organ that is. And I have this degenerative eye problem, so I go to this eye hospital in Bangkok, and they have all the high tech, they do all these kind of photographs of my retina, and I've seen all this, pictures of my retina, and the things the kind of blood vessels that go funny, and then they, and you see, really the eye is quite an impressive, amazing organ, quite delicate. And what we see, we just take for granted, but it does affect us, whether it's light or dark, or just the shades and colors and shapes has an effect on our, make us happy or sad or greedy or averse or angry or bored or whatever. So you're kind of living in a totally sensitive situation on this planet. The whole planet is sensitive. So it seems like a trap. How can you get outside the power of this planet, the weather, and the physical body? Is there any way out of it, or are we just helplessly caught, trapped in these forms and on this planet in this sense realm? And then the wonder is that there is a way out. It's mindfulness. and at first, I thought, this is impossible. I start thinking about it. A moment of mindfulness is easily gone because you're thrown right back into your old obsessions and fears. But as you keep practicing more and more and cultivating it, then it becomes the stronger force. Mindfulness becomes stronger than your emotions or the worldly impingements or the problems, physical, emotional problems that you experience. It's a stronger force, but at first it seemed, when I first had this insight into this, I remember throwing myself on the floor and started crying. I can't do it, it's impossible. It just seemed totally impossible. Emotionally, I just couldn't handle it. And yet there was something outside me observing this person lying on the floor crying. I can't do it. It is a strange kind of, as I remember it, there's actually this form crying. I can't do it. And then there was something outside that observing it. And I began to say that observing, that's what led me on, is trusting in that. Because on a personal level, sometimes it seems hopeless, impossible, and whatnot anyway. So you can't believe that. I don't believe any of those kind of thoughts or feelings that I can have. Know what they are. And then, I found, because my tendency was to try to attack the ego. I don't want an ego. I have certain egotistical tendencies that I don't like about myself at all. There's not emotional habits and assumptions on a personal level that the critical side of me doesn't like about me as a person. So I thought I can't just get rid of my ego, because that comes from this desire to get rid of something. But But sakyaditi then became more of a useful term as a fetter, because I had to put it into a practical use. What do I mean by that? Not just Pali dictionary, but in a practical situation. And so I deliberately started using my ego and listening to it in both its positive and negative forms. So it was kind of fun in a way, because then you kind of had the right to be a bastard and say things that were very good, but you were observing. and so you're not trying to convince yourself you shouldn't be bad or angry or selfish, but you can be really selfish and listen to it. So I'd take maybe selfishness to a really absurd degree, and sometimes it could break out laughing. It's so silly, selfishness. Rather than just thinking I shouldn't be selfish, I really observe, taking selfishness, not acting on it, not because you're, but listening to it like you're watching a television show or something, listening to the radio, and then the tendency to criticize, selfishness is bad, I don't do that. Just be selfish and listen and observe the feeling of being totally obsessed with yourself as a person, what you look like, and vanity and whatnot. So then, through that, I could actually, I got this insight. Sakyaditi is that. I have to think, I have to create, I have to use language, I have to use pronouns and adjectives, and that to become somebody. And then that which is aware of the ego is not the ego. So then I had this insight of, I rest in this awareness of the ego, not in the ego. Because the ego, you see, it can change and be very nice, very stupid, or whatever, but this awareness is not about being nice or being stupid, but it's certainly here and now. It's bright. You're not dull and you're not in a fog. It has a brightness and a discerning ability.